Good evening and welcome to Writers at Work. In this month's edition, we are joined with a very eminent guest who has graced us with her presence. We are joined with Miss Nev March, who has joined us all the way from the US. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us today. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation on behalf of the Writing Studio at IIT Gandhinagar. I warmly welcome you virtually to our community. Thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure, Nivid.
Okay, before you begin, ma'am, I can give you a quick introduction, to your bio, to your formal introduction. Nev March is the first Indian-born writer to win the Minotaur Books and Mystery Writers of America's award for best first crime fiction novel. After a long career in business analysis in 2015, she returned to her passion, writing fiction, and now teaches creative writing at Rutgers University. She lives in New Jersey, and her debut novel, Murder in Old Bombay, was widely acclaimed critically. And her books, they deal with issues of identity, of race, of moral boundaries. And, looking at this from the lens of crime fiction must be so intricate and so much fun. I can already imagine that, ma'am. And the sequel to Murder in Old Bombay, Peril at the Exposition, is set during the 1893 World's Fair, a time of conflict that planted the seeds of today's red and blue political divide. And her third novel, which we are all most excited about, which feature the iconic characters of Captain Jim and Lady Diana's their third adventure. It is going to be out in the September of 2023. So, if possible, we'll also get some tidbits about that book from Miss March as well. Thank you so much, Miss March, for joining us once again.
Sure, thank you. Nivid, don't call me ma'am. It's Nev. It's
Nev,
simple. It's
okay,
short.
thank you so much. All right, all right, all right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, please. We can go ahead with your presentation, Nev, and then we'll move on to the question and answers. Take as much
Uh,
time as you need. No worries. Thank you so much.
sure. So I love a show and tell because pictures, as are worth 1,000 words. I basically write pictures. I write so that people will enjoy being there. So here are some of the pictures that I used in my research, and of course, they tell about the first book, Murder in Old Bombay. So let me share my screen, the window right here. Confirm that you can see this, David.
Yes, Nev, it's visible.
Okay, great. Yeah. So here's my writing group. I always start every talk with a thank you to these people. They were from different countries. We have an Algerian, an Australian gentleman who had Norwegian heritage, and of course, the rest of them Americans, but different ages, different backgrounds. And we used to meet every single week in the Hunterdon County Library. So, local writing groups, I have to credit them with a large portion of my success because my writing took a massive leap forward as soon as I could build a thick skin, because it takes a thick skin to take input on your writing. So here's the book. The first book totally blew me away when it won this very prestigious award that's not even given every year. It's a award for unpublished writers. The Mystery Writers of America gets about 600 um, submissions every year, and every 2 or 3 or 4 years they actually announce a winner. Why does it matter? Because it launched my career. It gives you a contract for the book with the world's largest publisher of detective fiction, that is Macmillan. We actually get published under the Minotaur imprint, but this is just a fabulous opportunity for unpublished writers, and I recommend that people, if you're serious about your craft, go ahead and submit. So the book got a wonderful reception. It got nominated for all these national awards. I mean, it's just shocking. I'm competing with, people that I've admired for decades. And then here, actually got to attend the Edgars. Just to put this into contrast, it's as if you started as a, newbie actor and suddenly you get invited to the Oscar Awards. I mean, you're actually going to talk. You're going to present at the Oscar. So I gave a speech. I think I was shaking the whole time, but it was fantastic. So the book, right? So let's talk a little bit about the book. I always have to start with this image because the people in US typically don't understand how fragmented India was and still is. And this, even for Indians, sometimes this image is surprising because those blue-gray areas, that's how much land was under the princely states. It's enormous, and there were over 500, as I'm sure you know. Anyway, I won't talk more about that because you guys know your Indian history, and this is a little bit of Parsi history. Okay, I'm a Zoroastrian Parsi. I was brought up that way. I'm very active in the community. I'm now on the board of the local association. And when I was growing up, this story about the Godrej sisters, it's actually a real story. It used to be used as a cautionary tale, like, oh, you can't go there, you can't join the hiking and mountaineering society. No, you can't go with this guy on his scooter, not even in daylight. No, you can't do this, can't do that. And it was very frustrating as a girl in India. I'm sure every girl has had faced this, but they were trying to protect me. They're always trying to protect us, right? And why this is the example given, because these two young ladies on the right hand side are the actual victims of what is now called the Rajabai Tower tragedy. This is a mystery that was never solved to date. To date, we don't know what happened to these girls. They died in, their death dates are actually right here, 25/4. So this is the Indian formulation, right? 25th of April, 1891. Okay, 1891. And I'm hearing this story in the 1970s and 1980s, and I thought, okay, this is something that's just happened. It had happened 90 years before, 80, 90 years before, and was still being treated as something that just happened. The two girls had gone up. They were both married, by the way, 15 years old and 19-year-olds. They had gone up to the top of this tower, Rajabai Tower. I'm sure you've seen it. If you've been in Bombay, I'm sure you may not have been up because it's close to the public. I was able to beg permission to go up, and they still wouldn't let me go on this gallery here, which is where the girls died. They fell from the gallery, right? We still don't know why. We still don't know who was after them. We still don't know what caused their deaths. Anyway, here's a pretty picture in the middle that I thought this might be what the victim, looked like. Pilu and Bacha, the two girls. I thought, she's got this solemn look on her face, but look at the gorgeous sari and so on. And then, of course, this is iconic Rajabai Tower. And this story just has been in my head forever. And I thought, all right, let me try and solve it based upon what happened during the time. And then I created this character. Of course, I have no idea who this young gentleman is. He's probably a World War II soldier. I don't know his name, okay? But the look on his face is kind of looking inward and a little sweet. He's a sweet guy. And I thought, okay, that's going to be my main character because he's a little beat up. And he's Anglo-Indian, so he's got some British features, but also in his heart, he feels Indian. And then here's on the left what I thought Adi Framji, I didn't use the word Godrej at all in my book. It's what I thought Adi Framji looked like. And lo and behold, the real Adeshwar Godrej, the founder of what's today, Godrej Enterprises and the conglomerate, he doesn't look that different. He has a beard, but he's got the narrow features and the eyeglasses and so on. Again, I have no idea who the gentleman on the left is. Okay, these are just pictures I picked up from Pinterest that kind of represented my characters. But a little strange how similar they looked. This gentleman was 22 years old when his wife of 1 year, so his bride, died. And I read, about him because he fascinated me. How do you recover from that? From a 22-year-old kid, really, he's so young, losing the love of his life. He never remarried, so we think he obviously was in love with her, but he went on to become a serial entrepreneur, incredibly prolific inventor, and remarkably hardworking and a total patriot. He believed in Indians producing things when the world didn't, right? Nothing was produced very much. I think steel industries had started, but that was pretty much it at that point. We're talking about 1890s. Um, so I really wanted to know how the heck this guy had the resilience. And that's where the story started. So we'll now move ahead. I invented a sister for him. Again, I have no idea who this young gentleman is. I don't know his name. Okay, but he's got this solemn look on his face. But look at the gorgeous sari and so on. And then, of course, this is iconic Rajabai Tower. And She's wearing a corset, so of course, the English clothes of the day. But this lady on the right is actually Cornelia Sorabji, whose father was a Parsee who converted to Christianity. And Cornelia is wearing sari in a very strange fashion. You can see the soras over her head, the pallus over her head, but she's also got this long frilly blouse, which is sort of a Parsi um, version of the giving the blouse the look of an English dress. And Cornelia Sorabji was India's first lady lawyer. Wasn't She took the she studied law, but she wasn't allowed to take the bar, and she ended up working for the Court of Wards, which took care of a lot of the problems of the princely states that had been dispossessed and were being run by the British government. Anyway, she's written 5 books. She's not a great writer, okay? I will admit that. She's a horrible writer, but they're autobiographical. These are real things that she did. So wonderful source material for me. Here is stuff about the Sepoy Mutiny. These portraits are from the National Gallery in London. They're on the web. They're open source now. What do you call them? Public access. These two guys, okay, again, interested me for various reasons. So the guy on the left looks like a Punjabi soldier. He's got this talwar in his hand. He's got the wonderful turban, and he's in the midst of action. He's got his horse and wonderful, coloration, everything here. This guy is actually a Brit. He is Dicton Probin, I think is his name, and he got a Victoria Cross, and so of course he got immortalized in this portrait. Who's the guy on the right, and why are they touching his beard? It's just kind of a personal thing to do. Well, they're actually dressing this British guy, this Englishman, up as an Indian because he snuck out of the sewers in when the Lucknow fort was under siege from the mutineers, and he snuck out and brought the British cavalry, British army, to their rescue. So this is Siege of Lucknow, and they're disguising him again. Got a Victoria Cross, and was immortalized in this portrait. Okay, why does this matter? Because a lot of Brits were apparently dressing up as Indians and mingling with the local population, and got away with it. So that's kind of cool. And of course, in my book, Captain Jim takes a leaf from Sherlock Holmes, and he's wandering around in disguise. Oh, he actually speaks, a few North Indian languages. And I thought, all right, that might be credible. Picture of the mutiny, again, portraits and landscapes drawn at the time, most of it by British painters. Of course, you have Raja Ravi Varma, who was doing lots of portraits at the time, but this is sort of what it might have looked like. The battle scenes, the horses, the numbers of soldiers involved. But what I didn't realize was that the mutiny almost got to Mumbai, almost got to Bombay. It got to Kolhapur, which is pretty darn close. And this guy, Charles Forget, was superintendent of police. Again, he was an Anglo-Indian who tended, Britisher at that time, but he had some Indian ancestry and he did actually foil a plot by some mutineers, and ended up getting an award of like 12,000 rupees from the Indian industrialists and business people for saving them from the carnage that could have occurred during the mutiny. And one should remember that a mutiny is a very chaotic time, so I can understand their terror. He actually foiled the plot, so okay, we recognize him. But he wrote a book too, and it's only 100 pages long, and it is so full of colonial arrogance. It is, just it's hilarious. But he meant every word, so it's worth looking at how they saw things. Here are some pictures also that I enjoyed tremendously, and they're deliberately contrasting on the same page. I could have put them on different pages, but I wanted you to see contrast. So on the left is a typical red coat soldier in, formal. This is what they would call formal uniforms. Of course, at the bottom, the guy looks like, I thought this is what McIntyre would look like. Sam Brown belt, typical mustache. He's holding the solar topi, then you have some Gurkhas, short guys, terribly serious. Um, and of course, they have a wonderful role in my book, staunch, loyal, all the good things that you want in allies. Then you have these deliciously naughty boys in the middle. I know they're Brahmins because they have the little chotli at the back, but look at how much fun they're having just up there. And so I have a couple of rascals in my book, and I thought, even though they're supposed to be urchins, they're not, you know, well taken care of Brahmin boys. But that naughtiness is what I was going for. Right up against them are some refugees, barely wearing loincloths and clothes. They're refugees because of the sacks they're carrying. And of course, the cares that have worn away their faces. They're not that old, but they're worn by poverty and disease. And then right up against them, deliberately right up against them, is this arrogant princeling. I did remember his name at one time, but I've forgotten it. But oh my God, look at that. Just the expression on his face is priceless. And at the bottom, we have three women. There's the rightmost one, the lady with excessive ornamentation and flowers in her hair, is obviously a bride in some, you know, traditional attire, but the look on the face is what I was going for. So this is Chutki in a happier time. If you read the book, she's the waif that gets saved, adopted, whatever, by Captain Jim, and I thought, she was dressed up. That's what she would look like. In the middle is a again very inward-looking character that I took to represent the Rani of this Rajput fictional place. The fictional place is actually based upon um, the kingdom of Balasinur, which at the time did have female regents and Muslim female regents. Okay, pretty rare. So Balasinur has had that history. Oh, I went into the histories of over 500 princely states, heartbreaking, some of them. Some of the rulers really tried so hard to do right by their populations, and some succeeded, some failed. I mean, Mysore is, Hyderabad. These are such examples. I could tell you so many stories. And then, of course, the last one here at the bottom is a lady making roti on a chula, which is constructed out of rocks. And then there's an upturned tawa. The frying pan is kind of upturned, convex maybe, and she's just throwing the roti on there. This is part of what happens in the book at one point, and so I thought, all right, let's have this in as well. But locations. This is the Rajabai Tower. These are all photographs that I took when I went. This is the reading room, beautiful Gothic and ornamented architecture. It's just delightful to be there. And I think that they are thinking of opening it up to the public. Not a good idea because it is terribly claustrophobic there. Okay, last few slides here. Beautiful picture of Lahore. I think that's called Delhi Gate, maybe, that ornamented structure. And then on the left, you have this vendor selling something with a wonderful beard, which the artist has taken such pains, the touch of light. And the thing that most people forget or cannot see is right in the center of the painting, there is a beggar. And our eyes just gloss over him, but the painter has spent a lot of time getting all his rags displayed in beautiful strokes. And again, it's because we tend to not look at beggars. We are trained to not look at beggars. You can't make eye contact, I was told, and I, lived in India 24 years, so I practiced that. Anyway, this is part of the social commentary that will, which haunts my books, actually. Anarkali Street in Lahore, more recent pictures. The one in the middle is actually, if you can see, very, very faded. It says 1866. These are Afridi tribesmen in Afghanistan, what is today Afghanistan. But look at the long rifles, look at all their belts. I think they've been posed for this photograph, but the clothing, the attitudes are all fairly authentic. And then, of course, on the right, you may actually know this because it's close to Mumbai. This is Lohargarh Fort. It's a delightful, creepy place, which we have passed on the way from Bombay to Pune, I think, and it's hard to get to, but it sort of represents some of the one of the adventures which is supposed to in my book happen in Pathankot. But anyway, I wanted this look of a fortress that has, this look. It's hidden in the mountains. It's falling apart a little bit, but also hiding secrets. Society ballrooms. I'm thinking this, oh gosh, I've forgotten where this was, but this is probably one of the ballrooms of the Taj or one of the palaces now. Oh, this is definitely the Darbar Hall. In left is Mysore. It's now a tourist place. And the right is the throne room of the Nizam of Hyderabad. You can go there, you can see this gorgeous location. It's just in contrast to some of the other places. These were just so beautiful to write about. And then, of course, this is a picture of what I thought Framji Mansion looked like. I have a detailed description of the rooms and so on. But you see of course, you have the colonnades, and then inside there's a staircase, and you have a little balcony where the host and hostess can observe their guests arriving in their carriages and welcome them and so on. So anyway, we have parts of this. The book has an obvious premise. The job is to catch the killers and to come home. That's what Captain Jim is supposed to do, catch the killers and come home. But where's home? He's Anglo-Indian. Nobody wants him. The Brits are famously racist, did not want to mingle with the local population, which is us Indians. But frankly, we Indians are equally racist. So we didn't want Anglo-Indians either. And therefore, he's a little bit of a pariah, a social pariah. So that's some of the things that are part of the the story. So I tell friends that the novel is full of surprises, an action-packed adventure, love story, epic, but it's really a love story to Bombay. It'll always be Bombay to me. And I will stop sharing at this point. Ta-da. Okay, I think we're back.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Nev, for such an intricate introduction to your world of imagination. That was so inspiring. I wanted to know first from you, since you laid out the entire path of inspiration, right? Where did you derive imagery from? Where did you derive characteristics from? What's the historical context through which you view the world of your story? But so then let me come to the story. When it comes to crime fiction, one thing, and this is a genre which so many of us have just grown up loving. For so many of us, this has been our entrance into reading, right? The first thing that captivates our attention and imagination both have been detective novels, more often than not. So when it comes to crime fiction, the central element of plotting, concealing information, revealing it at the right time, and then keeping your audience constantly engaged about what is going to happen next. That seems like a task near to impossible. How do you do that? How do you, as a novelist, what's your approach to plotting?
So I have a method, but you're right. It is each time is fresh, each time is new. Each time I go, oh boy, can I do this again? Uh, there is an outline I create. So I write in 5 steps,
Hmm.
but they are not discrete, they overlap. So research is one that really covers the entirety. Even when I'm doing final proofs, I'm still doing research. Then there's the outline, which I agonize over and is the most painful part of writing for me. I'm right now doing that for book 4. I have been doing that for at least a month, maybe 2, and I'm still agonizing over the outline. I overplot and then I draft, and when I'm doing that drafting, I end up deviating from the plot anyway, the outline. So, um, but there needs to be a meaty enough outline for me to have the confidence to start, because if so, I did have an outline a month ago. I did have an outline in February. I sent an outline to my agent, okay, but it was so thin it would have run out in 60 pages. So Maybe if I just let it run and deviated and go on tangents, it might have worked, but I didn't have the confidence to do that. So even though this is my fourth book, I'm still agonizing over the outline. And I do everything in Excel because I have a commercial background. So there are lots of things I do to build up the plot, and many of them involve asking questions which I then write the answers again in Excel, and then I'll find the things that I didn't have in the outline and start moving them into the outline. Um, in a mystery, there's certain genre expectations. You have to have the crime very early on. You have to have multiple suspects. You have to have cause and effect. Like you can't have the detective suddenly going off to interview somebody. Well, where did he know that? Where did he find that information? How did he get that information? And why is that more important than something else? So you have to have logical, it has to be believable. Putting all that together, it has to really be in lockstep. And I do this, I agonize over this. So that's the drafting stage. Take that outline every day, sit down, take one line from Excel, move it into Word, and write that scene. Just write the scene. The job of the draft is just to exist. So I don't care at that point how good it is. I'm really just writing it as simply, as directly as I can. I put in a lot of short forms for myself. I put in a lot of bold things. That means I have to look at them later. I have to research them because I can't slow down at that point. The picture is in my head. This is the most obsessive part of writing, the draft. Okay, I am addicted. People have to call me for lunch and dinner because I don't know what time it is. I can barely sleep during this time because I'm so addicted to the picture in my head and trying to get it out. And the dialogue just pops out, and then they keep talking, and I have to rein them in. And so that's drafting. It's about 4 months for me. I can't stop. I will miss appointments. I will forget to call people back. I will neglect my family. I will forget to cook. All the things a woman is not supposed to do because at this point I'm hijacked. And I try to have a little bit of balance and responsibility. I usually fail. And then when the family is ready to drag me out of here, my husband wants to keep me fit. So he keeps asking me, shall we go for a walk? You want to go to the gym? And my answer is, I'm writing. And I have a sign on the on my door, do not disturb. And when I really mean it, I lock the door. Like, you can disturb me, but I won't open. If the house is burning down, I will smell it and I will come out myself. Then there is a hiatus, 6 months, 6 weeks. Sometimes it's 4 weeks, sometimes it's 6 weeks. When we go and do family vacations and we do everything else, and I try not to think about the book and I try not to touch the book. I try because it, again, if you've been in that so long, then I keep thinking, oh, this is wrong, that is wrong. And I want to fix things. Instead, I start again in Excel, I start writing out plot holes. All the things that are wrong with the book, I just write them down. And sometimes there are 200 lines. That's then revision. The next step is dive back in and move chapters around, delete entire chapters, read it through and take away all the duplications because I have ended up with 15 or 20 different repeats of the same thing happening. Um, and then there are multiple passes for editing, which is different than revision. And then before you know it, it's time to turn it in to the editor, and I panic. I panic, totally panic. I beg for more time. I go in through it over and over and over, and I don't want to let it go because I think there's something more to fix. And then even after I send it in, I keep fixing it. So how do I plot? Like a maniac.
One thing that I love about conducting these conversations every single time is that our collective understanding of the romance of writing starts falling apart one by one, one by one.
Yeah, it's
It,
a job.
it,
It is totally a job,
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
you have to show up. Some days I, just want to chill and, like, you know, play. I want to go play the
Mm.
piano. I want to go, I have these adorable neighbors. They're 3 and 6 years old. I just want to go play with them. um, but no, you have to show up. And so I also have to do, being a writer is a business. So I have to keep track of commitments to present. I'm actually going to travel to Maryland to present again there. There's a business aspect of putting stuff up on social media. Um, I pitch podcasts every now and then. I will send out articles to magazines. So there's a business side of it, and then there's the creative side of it. And I'm usually very good with managing them, but it's a drafting that right in the middle where everything falls down. It all falls apart, and I have to set multiple reminders for myself if I have to show up somewhere, because I actually forget what day or week or month it is.
I would like to double click on one aspect that you talked about, because a majority of the population on the IITGN campus, they deal with technology, with innovation, and they are very methodical in the way that they approach their research, in the way that they approach their academics. And there is a sizable number of people who are also creatively inclined, right? They are students of humanities, they are students of social sciences, and there's an intersection of people who are also gravitated towards technology. At the same time, they are very creative in their expression. So this merging of two worlds, of plotting on Excel, is something which is very fascinating to me. Um, how does that help? Does that help, first of all? And then if it does, um, what intricacies come out of being so methodical about plotting? We'll move on to another aspect of your writing in a minute, but if I can just stay on plotting for one more question, if you would like to elaborate on that.
Yeah, each writer comes up with a method that works for them, right?
Hmm.
Um, this works for me because I worked in corporate America for 25 years. Um, it helps to be able to move things around, because you change your mind every now and then, or something doesn't connect. Uh, for me, there's, the main thing is what happens in this chapter, and what's the surprise or the reveal, or what's new, what actually, what's the turn. So Ken Follett had this master class one time that I'd taken that said every 4 pages the story must turn. And what he means by turn is something significant must change. It could be big or small turns. Some plan goes awry, some new information, something you expected didn't happen, something different happened, something, whatever. The turn is important, because otherwise, why are we reading if the same thing is happening or nothing is happening? And some of my frustration with literary fiction,
Hmm.
non-genre
Hmm.
fiction,
Hmm.
is that frequently nothing happens. And it is happening internally, but damn it, this is a real world. You want to keep your people interested. If you don't keep them interested, why will they keep reading you? So something must change, and that is how I keep track of it in Excel. So what happens, and what is the surprise or the reveal or the new information or the plan, even if it's just a plan, something. Now, the other columns keep track of who's the current suspect, because you can't
Mhm.
keep shifting around. One must
Hmm.
explore
Hmm.
what day and time is it. So murder and
Oh,
all
okay.
gone, yeah, over the course of 6 months. Peril at the Exposition, this one also, whoops, yeah, now you can see it. This one
Hmm.
also happens over the course of 6 months, so that the weather changes,
Of
right?
course.
This one, ta-da, reveal.
Ah,
That's the cover, the
we have
new
the
cover.
title reveal for the next book for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Spanish Diplomat secret happens all on one ship in the course of 10 days. So I
Hmm.
must know, is it morning, evening, or night? What are they eating? They can't be eating
Hmm.
dinner and it's 10 a.m. All those things, just to keep that straight. Why is this important? Because if you move around chapters, like I frequently do, you break that completely. So the weather, the time of the day, all of that is tracked. I also do something called GMC, goal, motivation, conflict. Who wants what, but why they can't have it? What's the problem? And that just keeps me honest in terms of motivation. You can't use your characters like chess pieces. He goes to A, he goes to B, he goes to C.
Hmm.
Boring as hell, but also, what is he feeling? What is he feeling? What's the motivation? What is going on? And I frequently keep track of other people's. So sometimes it's Diana. Like this whole book, Peril at the Exposition, is Diana's story.
Hmm. Hmm.
This one is Diana's story. So what is she going through? And if she gets too whiny and repetitive, I want to make sure I cut that. So the
Hmm.
motivation must either escalate or it must change through the progressive steps. And then there are successes and failures and so on. But so I want to vary that. If you keep seeing somebody fail, for half the book, that is damn demotivating for a reader to read. You're beat up enough in life. You don't need to be
Hmm.
beat up in your book. There must be some successes, at least a few successes. And yet, if we keep reading about somebody successively succeeding, that is very boring because firstly, that is, just unbelievable. And might not read a fantasy then at that point. It's all, and frankly, even fantasies are a lot more grueling than that. Even fantasy novels, the whole genre is not all about success, but it's just boring. So to vary that and mimic real life is the goal, while moving the story on, escalating the stakes and the conflicts and the possibilities. Agatha Christie used to start out with a wide set and explore successively. And then at the end, she would decide who's the least likely suspect. Let's make it him or her. And then she would refigure the beginning to put in a few clues that actually it was her. I frequently know sort of who's going to be the crook.
Hmm.
And I have, usually the beginning writes itself in a sense that I have a very clear sequence of how things will push into the inciting incident. I also have a pretty good sense of the ending, at least how it will happen, one or two scenes. The middle is where the logic, it must be logical. So that's the piece that of the most amount of work to do to make it logical and to build the plot so that it's still interesting, so that you're dropping enough red herrings that you're being
Hmm.
fair with the reader, that some of them are the real clues there among the red herrings. Which is it? um, it's bringing the reader on that journey, right? Here, take my hand. This is going to be fun. I promise you that. Let's go. Sometimes we'll be running, but
Keep
I
up with
promise.
the pace. Keep up with the pace.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
that. It's there.
Hmm.
Take my hand and come with me for this ride. Okay, this is gonna be fun. Um, we're gonna learn some things. We're gonna think some new things,
Hmm.
and sometimes you're gonna be mad at me.
I remember reading Ackroyd for the first time. My cousin had been after me for months, read Ackroyd, Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And then my literature class actually compelled me to read Ackroyd because I had to make a presentation on it. And then I felt so tricked at the last moment. I'm not going to reveal anything for anyone who's going to watch this,
Do
but
not. Yeah.
I felt so fooled and completely tricked at the last moment because it was one sentence that if I had thought about it, it could have given it away at 70% of the book. Right? You mentioned red herrings. It was just one sentence about an anachronism about where that certain character was and what they
Yeah.
said about it. A half
Yeah.
truth that could have been looked into. But
Yeah.
no, you're so immersed in storytelling that you just let that go. And then lo and behold, it turns out to be the very same person at the very end.
Agatha Christie was a crook. She frequently did not do right by the reader. She frequently broke the rules, and yet we love all her 66 novels. So a master. But I'll tell you one thing. I've
Hmm.
read the vast number of them, and for that matter, the vast number of Sherlock Holmes stories as well. Somehow, at the end, I was not emotionally engaged. Frequently, I was, I got it, intellectually engaged. but my heart wasn't, you know, obsessed is the word. My heart was not obsessed by her stories. They were wonderful puzzles and revealing of human nature. Absolutely give her that. Uh, tricks with poison, but motivation, beautiful. But something was always lacking, and
Hmm.
that for me is what I try to do with the books, is to engage both the heart and the mind,
Of
because
course.
we want meaning in life. We want endings that satisfy, and we want stories that haunt us. I want
That
that.
linger
So
on, that linger on once the cover is closed. Yeah. I, in fact, was coming to that because you mentioned that you are preoccupied with how a character is feeling in a certain moment when such tension is going on in their life. And is it so rare to find a crime fiction writer actually being just as cognizant about the emotional aspect of storytelling? Because one qualm that I often have about crime fiction is that the characters are often at the expense of the plot.
yeah,
That they are essentially vehicles to carry the plot forward. They are at the service of the next twist and turn coming up.
yeah,
And if you think about it from a practical point of view, if something so tumultuous is going on in their life, if they've lost somebody, if there's a murder, and they don't know who has killed their loved one, can you imagine the grief that they must be feeling, and the emotional turmoil that it's so sad that very few authors actually engage with this dynamic of the emotional angle of a mystery novel character or a crime novel character. So Nev, my next question comes to that. How do you deal with the conflict, the emotional conflict of crime, which I think was such an intricate space that you have explored? You also deal with social implications of the time that you set your novels in, and the various different levels of discrimination that your characters go through, the identity crises that your characters go through. They are such uh, you know issues with gravitas to handle, all in the midst of a crime novel. How?
I don't see that as a contradiction at all, because crime doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Hmm.
Nobody sets out one day, say, oh, I'm going to go and kill so and so today. It is all part of the social fabric of something oppressive, whether it's an injustice or a perceived harm, or some other hurt. um, I tend to not write serial killer things, stories, because it's very easy to be black and white in that world. And I think that the real world, with normal, not psychopathic people, has enough conflict in it that can set people at opposition. And not just because one person's win is another person's loss. It's not just because of that, because of fundamental differences in how we see the world, how we believe we should be treated or somebody else should be treated. And that's where the opposite of discrimination is entitlement, right? That's the
Hmm.
converse.
Hmm. Hmm.
When you're
Absolutely.
feeling it, yeah, when you're feeling it, it's discrimination. But when you're doing it, it's actually entitlement. And we're all doing it, by the way. We are all doing it. This is what I discovered in my maybe corporate career or my life, is that harm happens by very well intentioned, decent people. Decent, good people are doing horrible things, and finding ways to justify them. And that is interesting to me. That is part of the way that I set up my villains, is that they have, at least in their own mind, very good reasons for what they're doing. And that sense of this is how the world should be is so convincing to them that they can continue in their nefarious activities or whatever they may be. Um, I rarely have crimes of impulse
Hmm.
in my novels. They are usually more complex than that, and there's usually multiple possibilities. But you came back to conflict, and the social conflict is far greater than any the usual stimulus for crimes, money, woman, love. There's like three or four things: revenge, love, money. The social motives, if one could blanket that statement, are far greater than those traditional Poirot's three motives that he always
Hmm.
goes
Hmm.
after. Uh, and I think that is cultural. That each culture has some of these broken parts that have been there historically. Why do I write historical fiction? I'm always writing about now, these things are happening now. Historical writers are writing about now. They just use the past as a lens because things are easier to see in the distance. They're easier to see with the distance of time, crystallized in some fashion. But the things I write about are still happening now. It's not like
Absolutely.
discrimination against women has gone away. It's not like race discrimination has gone away. And all I'm doing is trying to let people think a little bit. If you empathize with any of these characters, then you think, am I doing this? Am I in my daily life doing this? So that's the purpose. So the conflict is everywhere around us. It's just usually we don't see it because it isn't slapping you in the face. And my books are intended to draw out those social nuances that we are all part of and may not be aware of the implications.
Hmm.
You're
I would
breaking
like
up
to
a little.
now.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I would like to now shift the focus a little, if I may, to the writing circle that you mentioned at the very beginning of your presentation. You said that the writing circle serves an integral purpose in your writing process. Could you please tell us a little about what that setting is and how the practice of writing review feedback? And you said that revisions and editings are two different acts within that setting. So can you please tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, the input I get from my critique partners and so on are usually right at the end. It's in the editing process. You have to have your revisions done before that, otherwise they'll tear you to pieces. Um, um, so look, not everybody is as fortunate as I was before COVID to have that writing group, the critique group. So in 2015, I got laid off. I'd been very successful, winning all these,
Oh, okay.
corporate awards. I'd been doing very well. I got all these wonderful performance reviews. I'd be, considered top performer and whatnot. And I was happy, making decent money. Family was doing well. Kids were growing up and so on. And yet I knew there was something missing. So when I got laid off, which was like, whoa, what the F, right? Just couldn't believe it. Like, how could this happen that I'm not essential to the organization that I'm so committed to? But it didn't matter. Layoffs happen. It's fact of life in every country. So it takes you a couple of days to get your feet. And then I said, all right, what did I when was I really, really, really happy? What did I do in the past that made me most gloriously happy? And I actually had to go back to when I was in my 20s and I was writing short stories. By the way, a few of my short stories were published by Target, a magazine for
Oh, wow. Okay.
children in India in 1990s, 80s, 90, late 80s. I was pretty young at the time, and I'd send out these short stories, and they were published. And it was the writing of them, not the fact that they were published, but the writing of them was just intrinsically delicious. So I want to go back and retrieve that feeling, that delicious feeling. And honestly, the drafting process, if I've written a good chapter, I will be walking on air, regardless of nobody has even seen it. Nobody has read it. And I'm just dancing around the house because it's just come out so good. So yeah, you have to find your joy, and that's what it was all about. You know, trying to do that was what it was all about. Um, Repeat the last part of your question. I have
The
missed
writing circle, the writing circle.
the circle. So I was lucky. I just happened upon them, right? When I was laid off, I decided, all right, I'm going to go there. And it took me 6 months, Nivid, to show them a single page of my writing.
Wow.
Okay, so that tells you how timid I was, how terrified. But they were so kind. And listening to other people's work get critiqued with your full attention and having that piece of paper in order to critique it, that is a wonderful education because you can see
Hmm.
things in other people's writing that you cannot see in your own. We are blind. We are just deliberately
Completely
blind.
agreed.
Why? Because we made it. So there's a little bit of like, this is me, this is actually me. No, it's not you. It's a product. It's not you. um, but there's more than that because we have been part of creating it. All the seeds of that are still inside you, and you somehow think that the writing has all of that. No,
Hmm.
it doesn't. It's the reader who tells you. So that's why when you're writing, you're a different person, a different lens than when you're editing. You have to edit like a reader
Hmm.
and write just write. In fact, writing is listening, right? The When you're showing something to a critique group, you've already listened to that inner voice, which is very hard for women, by the way. We are
Ah, interesting.
conditioned. Yeah, we are totally conditioned to not listen to our own voice. We are conditioned to listen to every other voice than our own. We're conditioned by statements like, what do you know about it? Or how do you know? That confrontation. How do you know? You know,
Hmm.
that tells you, shut up, don't listen to your own mind, your own voice, listen to everybody else around you. So that's why I started writing in my 50s, okay? Because it took me that long to recover from the social conditioning of you're a woman, you have to shut up and listen. And so okay, I did it. I came up with something, I wrote something and timidly offered it for critique. And I had seen the pattern that we had in this critique group, which is that you make 8 copies of it, you hand it around, you read it aloud, typically only 8 or 10 pages, and then each person goes around the table, actually, or in whatever order, and they'll tell you what they think about it, and you write that down furiously. And then we
Hmm.
ask people not to repeat. If somebody already said your input, don't repeat it because it's going to be just beating up on the person. We already know there's a typo. We already know that that sentence has a fragment. Get something new. And I learned who to listen to. Okay, don't listen to everybody. Do not listen to everybody. You go crazy. Some people will focus on the minutia. Some people will focus on the sentences. Some people will focus on the big picture. Some people will focus on the emotion.
Hmm.
And all of those are valuable, but the latter two, the big picture and the emotion, if you get those, the actual grammar and construction and sentence structure and yada yada and spellings, okay, technology will take care of all of that. Don't waste time. Waste time or spend time. Spend time on big important things. What is this piece saying? What is it saying? What's the implication? What are you trying to get across? What's the emotion that you're trying to get across? Those are things that you want to pay attention. And I'll tell you, this critique group stayed with me for 70 weeks. There are 70 short chapters in this book, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Very short chapters, right? They're like 5 page chapters. So 70 weeks. If I missed one week, they were calling me. They were calling me on the phone. Where are you? Are you coming? And unless I was out of the country, I was
Hmm.
coming. So and then I come back with this stack of 8. Um, they would write on their input sheets, and then I would go back to the chapter and make some of the changes, not all of them, make some of the changes, and then look at the next chapter, revise the heck out of it, do my edits, print it out, and go in again the next.
Hmm.
If you are not lucky enough to have a group
Of
like
course.
this, because remember, I'm getting maybe half an hour or 20 minutes of time during that group. We're also doing other people's work. All eight of
Hmm.
them don't get to talk every time. About three or four of them get to talk, and we are meeting for 2 to 3 hours sometimes. Um, you're working people. It's hard to carve out 2 hours, 3 hours in a week.
Of course.
It is hard, right? So the in exchange, if you don't have that, instead of that, trade chapters. Find somebody whose input and whose thoughts you admire, who has some life experience, and trade chapters. I will give you a chapter, you critique it, you give me a chapter and I will critique it. You pay with
Hmm.
your time. And
Hmm.
I can tell you, so this Stephen King said, write a lot, read a lot, right? Sorry, that's not enough. You're reading a lot. I have been a voracious reader my whole life. Writing a lot, I have stacks of things I've written. I don't know how good they are. That's not enough. It's the critique, the input, the understanding how it fell on somebody else. And oh my God, I'm writing British English, and my American people say that word doesn't mean what you think it means. there are so many differences between British English and American English, and I had to learn some of them. I thought it was good. I thought I had a mastery of English until they told me that I had made all these mistakes, and it's okay. Some of them you keep because I did want an English tone in the book, and some
Hmm.
of them I reluctantly, very unhappily, I changed. So critique group is essential. Some form of critique, some form of input. Having a beta reader is another way to do this. People even pay others to do this. Here's the key: the person who reads the book and gives you input should be somebody whose thoughts you value, who
Hmm.
has some serious you know understanding of the world. And it doesn't have to be an older person. It's wonderful if you can get a retired editor. Like I have a retired editor who's my buddy, and oh, I bless him every time we talk. He's worked for the Hunterdon County Democrat for 50 years, and
Oh, wow.
he edits my books like Peril he did twice. Murder in Old Bombay he did twice. That means I print out the whole stack. I print all.
Hmm.
He's a
Hmm.
paper guy, right? He's not electronically focused. Value retired people because they are your most precious resource, and they have the time to spend on you. I love him to bits. He has even the third book he did. I think he did it once. He kept saying, "You want me to go through it again?" I said, "I won't torture you with it." But he hand edits the whole thing, and he writes these stinging remarks at the top of the page. Stinging because I go, "Damn, how did I not see that?" And he's right, like 99% of the
Yeah.
time. Then it goes to my agent. Then it goes to my editor. By that time, it is so smooth that they will find very few
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
Goes
Hmm.
to a proofreader, and they will usually catch a few things. But we have done so much of the work that it is publishable at that point in time. The industry does actually very little. They do, yeah, they do wonderful marketing. They do very little
Hmm.
creative and the creation side of it. They are a business, right? The industry,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
publishing industry is about selling books. They're not about creating books. The writer has the sole responsibility for creating books, and your critique group is going to be essential. Like whoever's your critique partner is going to be essential.
It's fascinating how rigorous the process is, like both in terms of time and energy. Uh, just how intense and rigorous the entire process of creation can be, and every single time it's like a new book. It's like a first experience every single time.
Every single time. So I was under contract for book two and three, and I felt rushed. I felt
Hmm.
very rushed. Both of them, I had a schedule. I was on schedule, maybe a little late sometimes, whatever, but it worked. But I felt rushed. And so for book four, I'm deliberately doing it on my pace because some things can't be rushed. Ideas come when they come. They
Hmm.
come, when they come. So I have a diary, multiple diaries, but this is the color of the present one. I carry it wherever I go. I take it upstairs with me to bed. I take it in the car with me. because ideas come when they come, and if I don't put them down, I do lose them. I will lose them. I do
Absolutely.
lose.
Yeah.
And then I do go back, and if you can see, there are some colored things hanging off
Yes,
of it.
yes, they are tagged. Yeah.
So you have to go back, because what's the point of writing it down if you're not going to go back? Some people do this in Excel. I haven't learned to transcribe the whole thing. I feel like that might be excessive. But when I do research, I do transcribe important facts into Excel, again, into my historical notes page,
Hmm.
because when I'm trying to refer back to it, I can just do Control F, find it. Otherwise, I'll be pouring through my research books. And what if I return the research books to the library? Then what? So first I started to photograph important pages in the research books. And then I realized now I've got 300 pages photographed. Ah, how am I going to search those? So no. So now I actually take the time to transcribe important facts
Hmm.
into Excel, because I can then find them and use them very quickly. And it ends up being a little bit of extra work, but it helps tremendously, and it lowers my frustration and my stress level enormously as I'm going through the revisions and the edits portion, because I have these things at hand. Um, but yeah, it is a rigorous process. So if you don't do it this way, okay, can the publication? So we have a lot of work going on for promotion for the
Hmm.
third book, but I'm not writing right now. I'm researching, right? So I have now the leisure to help others. I have helped two other writers. One person knocked out a draft in 2 months. Okay, it's a bear now. So it's a bear, it's a monster. So I'm going through it to see why, and she needs this input because she doesn't know what she doesn't know. So
Hmm.
I'm going through and pointing out all these things that need to be changed, and this and that, and the ending, and the development of the character, and then the sequence and so on. I'm doing some of that work. I actually even outlined it for her because she didn't know the skill of outlining. All
Hmm.
right, here it is. I take every chapter. I will tell you in one line what happened in that chapter. So if you do not do it in a rigorous way, you get a draft. Congratulations, but it is not publishable. It is barely readable. And anyone you give that to is, that's akin to torture. So, so do the work to edit it one time at
Hmm.
least, and then give it to, like when I gave Jay this one, Spanish Diplomat Secret. I apologized like 50 times. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to make it better. This is the state it's in. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If I knew how to make it better, I would. And it stunk.
All right. Nev, just the last question before we close the interview. You also have an expansive career of yours as an educator, which fascinates me a lot as well. As somebody who engages with writing pedagogy, I'm always fascinated by how fellow writers conduct their classrooms, and especially when something as subjective and as creative and individualistic as writing is brought to the table in front of students. What happens then? Can you describe your classroom, and what kind of an atmosphere do you try to build among budding writers who are your students?
Yeah, so I have two sets of people who are my students. There are some folks that just enjoy a good story. They're readers, really. And then there are some folks who are writing memoirs, and they're writing, short fiction and so on, and are looking for that. With short fiction, look, with the short story, it's a simple structure. It's set up and payoff.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
no space for anything more. You set the thing up and you pay the thing off. And it's usually one scene or one aspect. You don't have the space to do more. So I have them write, and I do the job of the input, the feedback, the this is what the reader's experiencing. I give them that sounding board. I offer them that this is what a reader is going to think when they read this sentence. Did you really mean it like this? Because sometimes we're writing things with our own internal biases that come across very differently to a reader. They may be harsh, they may turn out to be arrogant, they may be, is that really how you want me to see that character? So I give them that lens. But then there's this other. So I write, I teach anything I want to learn. Okay, I
Ah,
have this.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't have a traditional adjunct role where I'm teaching the same course over and over. I pitch. So the semester that I'm drafting, I will not teach because I would miss every class. Okay, I would not do justice to the other people's work. But in between, so I usually teach about 3 months in the year. Okay, I have the luxury to do that, which is priceless. And most teachers will say, "What?" So I'm an intermittent teacher. Okay, I teach anything that I want to learn. So I am in May. I'm teaching humor in mysteries, and we're
Oh,
going to
wow.
dissect. Yeah, we're going to dissect. It's only 5 weeks. We will dissect this book by Wasim Khan called Lost Man of Bombay.
Okay.
um it's a delicious book. It's just I was just enamored of it. And we would so every week we will read certain number of chapters. I will have them identify what they found humorous, and then we would dissect that in class, like why was that humorous, what was this setup, what was the expectation, or how did he put these two things together, what was the contradiction. uh, because humor is one of the hardest things for me. I think it's one of the hardest things for anyone, but to some people have a natural bent for it. My natural bent is more serious.
Hmm.
So, of course, I admire the converse, that which I cannot do, right? I would say I have started to do it. There are bits in Murder in Old Bombay that are a little humorous, and then Peril, there are some wonderful contradictions, and then Spanish Diplomat Secret, even more. There are some really funny bits. Um, but bits, they're bits, damn it. I want to be able to do this. So I'll teach that. And we've done this whole series, I don't know, 5, 6 courses now called Great Mysteries, where in
Hmm.
5 weeks, what I do is I set up the requirement of reading 2 books and watching 3 movies, and we dissect those in class to understand what makes it work. What makes it work? Why is that a great mystery? They're usually mysteries because I focus on them, but
Hmm.
sometimes they're deeper than mysteries.
Hmm.
So one of the movies that comes to mind is one by Denzel Washington called The Little Things. The Little Things. Rami Malek is in it. It is a
Hmm.
mystery, and we don't know the killer. Okay, I'm going to spoil it for you. We never learn who the killer was, and yet that is a fascinating movie. It didn't ever become a blockbuster because they sold it as a mystery, and in a mystery you have to know who actually
Hmm.
killed
Who
the
the killer is? Yeah.
but it is a wonderful character portrait, and I think those deeper things are more precious. So that was one of the, for example, that's one of the pieces that we did. I love to expose an American audience to non-American
Hmm.
writers. So I have a couple of Brits, a couple of Indians that I have included in the class, and there's always things that they learn uh, that fascinate me. So I use them as my what's a nice way to say this, focus group. I
Ah,
love
yes.
They're readers. They are all customers. They're all customers. So I read it. I teach and I watch their expressions very closely. You know, each person, what part of it, how did they say what they said, what part of the book fascinated, why did this cause such angst, what did they object to. I watch them like like subjects in a clinical trial, and I gain a lot of insight from that. I gain a lot of background knowledge that somehow will then, I'm hoping, come come out. And probably then when I'm writing dialogue, a lot of that is coming out because it's naturally coming out. um, and I do this for myself before I teach the class, is I
Hmm.
will write an outline of the book. Whatever book it is, I write an outline of the book. This means you look at each chapter and you write in one sentence what happened in that chapter, and then look at the whole outline to see how did they get there, how did they create that emotional impact. One of the books I recommend everyone reading is a charming 200-page book called Brat Farrer. It's by Josephine Tay. Uh, just a marvelous, simple story, but it's a
Hmm.
delightful book. She's a master of managing the reader's emotion.
Ah,
Again, something
interesting.
I'm inspired to doing. Yeah, it's all deliberate, but it takes enormous skill to do that. Enormous skill
Absolutely.
of where to do what, where to, and she changes point of view very rarely. I rarely change point of view. Again, because this is part of the immersion.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
hold the reader by continuing with a point of view. If you jump from X time to Y time, or you jump from one person's point of view to another, each of those shifts causes a distance, a disconnect for the
Of
reader.
course. Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so my objective is to totally immerse the less disconnect, the less distance, the better. So I'll
Hmm.
do all that work before we get into the class. And that's why, you have to prepare for class anyway. But that's very valuable to me. I'm gaining more from teaching the class than they are.
All right. Thank you so much, Nev. You've been so kind with your time and your graceful and insightful remarks into your journey as a writer. If you want to pitch your novel officially, here's your space.
Here's the time. Okay, so of course you have to see the cover. So the Spanish diplomat's secret is the third one. The story continues, of course. Uh, Captain Jim and Lady Diana are on a steamship. They're going from New York to Liverpool, and somebody dies very early in the journey. And Captain Jim is assigned the job to find the killer because he's a Spanish diplomat. It's on a British ship, and the stakes are high. It could cause an international incident. But worse, if you look at that time period, Spain was very unstable, and it could have resulted in war. So he's got all this pressure on him. There's just one problem, a bunch of problems, but biggest problem is he's seasick. He suffers
Oh,
from seasickness. I have experienced this. It is not pleasant. So, of course, he's got a secret weapon, and that is Diana. She knows her way around steamships. She knows her way around high society, and so she's going to help out with this a little bit. I love the idea of tag teaming because they are so complementary. Um,
hmm.
and and so the premise, the setup from Murder in Old Bombay, where he's the big tough guy, but he's actually inside very sweet and soft.
Sweet and
And she's
soft. Yeah.
this petite, fragile little thing, but she's iron. She is tough. So that contrast is lovely to me, and so I continue to pull that on. There's also a little problem when okay, I'll go back into this. Most romances end when the couple is together. For me,
Hmm.
if you don't, then you're not married. If you don't believe that, then you are not married. So I want to show the evolving relationship, their balance changing over time in these stories. And so, of course, in the Spanish Diplomat Secret, we learn in the first chapter that Diana is hiding something.
Ah,
Aha, what will it be and how much is it going to hurt? So yeah, so there's layers upon layers, and that will be the Spanish diplomat secret. I took a bunch of risks with the second book. I changed the point of view character from Jim to Diana. I changed the location. In this book, it's back to Jim, so the point of view character is still Captain
hmm.
Jim. But I changed the risks I took were I changed the location from wide, landscape to all on one ship, and
Hmm.
now, the time period, everything has to be solved in 10 days. So it's a much more compressed time. Um, the availability of time is so much compressed that he now can't go through the usual policeman's rigor of systematically going through all the suspects, and therefore he's going to have to do something new. So those are the risks. It's not fun if you don't take risks. Okay,
Of course.
I
Of
don't
course.
I don't believe in recipes. I don't follow templates. I want every story to be different and unique, and they are different. They have different flavors and different tones. But I think you have to be a little courageous each time and take risks and do things differently, and see what happens.
September 2023 on the shelves.
Yes, it will be on the shelves in the US, hardcover,
Okay.
but it will also be available in ebook and
Hmm.
audiobook.
Oh,
And
wonderful. Okay.
yeah, I have to tell you, the audiobooks are fabulous. They give you chills. Vic Adam won awards for the first one. He did a little portion of the second. It was really Sadia Anger who did the second one.
Hmm, hmm.
And Vic, I think, will be doing the third one again. So
That's amazing. That's
yeah,
amazing. All right. We wish you the very best for the third novel, Nev, and thank you so much for always entertaining us with such intricate storytelling and such wonderful insight into human behavior and emotions through the
you're
lens
very
of crime. I love this intersection of crime through the lens of human emotions. Absolutely a sucker for that. Thank you so much for your time, Nev. We wish you well. And thank you so much once again for gracing us. It was an absolute delight and honor talking to you.
you're welcome. It was a joy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nev. Good night. Bye.
Good night.